Americans now believe that you need $1.8 million to comfortably retire, according to a Charles Schwab study this year. How much money do you really need to retire comfortably? The average number of years they expect their savings to last is 23 years. Why might these numbers be misleading? The problem I find with many of these surveys is that they often drive the narratives in our society. Once this study was published, a bunch of news outlets picked it up, and it was a headline all over the internet. Is this number really logical when it's sourced from simple survey participants? Perhaps $1.8 million sounds nice, but I'm not entirely sure how they arrived at that number. How much less could you actually need to retire comfortably? The point is, the amount you actually need to retire can be much less. Why is the actual amount often lower than what studies suggest? In this video, we'll discuss why that is and the math behind how much you need to retire comfortably. How can the way you plan affect your actual retirement needs? I'll show you that it doesn't have to be anywhere near $1.8 million when it comes to your ability to retire, and what your nest egg should be entirely depends on how much you're spending in retirement. How does your spending behavior impact your retirement planning? If you ask Fidelity how much that is, they'll actually say that you should plan to spend about 80% of whatever you're making annually in retirement. Why do financial experts recommend only using a portion of your income in retirement? That means if you have an annual salary of $100,000, you should plan to spend about $80,000 per year in retirement. How much should you actually be saving based on your current income? If you're even more conservative and perhaps have a higher salary, Fidelity says you should plan to spend around 55% or maybe even 60% of what you are making in retirement. Why do the recommended spending percentages vary so much? The crazy thing to me is that according to data from 2 years ago, the median retirement account balance in the US for someone aged 65 to 74 was around $200,000, and for those 75 and older, it was actually $130,000. Why are these numbers so far from the recommended $1.8 million? Both of these figures are very far from the $1.8 million needed. What does this mean for the average American? Additionally, 82% of adults over the age of 60 reported doing at least okay financially. What does this say about the financial reality of many Americans? Clearly, this shows that there's a difference between what Fidelity recommends, what the articles are saying, and how the average American is actually doing when it comes to how much you need to retire. Why do recommendations often not align with reality? It's very dependent on how much you plan on spending in retirement, as well as any other income sources you might have, such as a side hustle, a pension, or perhaps Social Security. How do additional income sources influence your retirement planning? Your spending is just one part of the equation when it comes to figuring out what your total retirement savings needed are. What other factors must you consider to calculate your retirement needs? You also need to know your withdrawal rate, aka how much of your nest egg you will be withdrawing every single year. Why is the withdrawal rate so important for your retirement planning? And that brings me to the most popular rule in retirement planning, which is the 4% rule. But there's actually a twist with this rule in today's video, which I will get into. What is the 4% rule and why is it being discussed? The 4% rule is known as the standard in retirement planning. What exactly does the 4% rule state? It simply states that you can withdraw 4% of your nest egg in the first year of retirement, then adjust that amount for inflation every year thereafter. Why is adjusting for inflation important? The typical time frame for retirement is actually 30 years, according to the founder of this rule, William Bengen. How long should you plan your retirement savings for? However, Recently, this rule has come under a bit of fire, most notably because the founder of the 4% rule himself has quoted suggesting raising the target rate to 4.5% or even 5% when he saw that many retirees were dying before spending down their life savings. Why did William Bengen adjust the 4% rule? That's probably a situation you don't want as a retiree, dying with more money than you could have spent during your life. What are the risks of a too high withdrawal rate? In the most optimal world, you're probably spending just enough so that whenever you do perhaps expire, your retirement savings balance is exactly zero. Is this really a sustainable plan for retirement? Of course, there are those people who save a bunch of money and never spend it so that they can pass it on to their kids, their family, their trust fund, whatever. How does passing on savings to the next generation affect your own spending? Bengen started to notice that retirees were dying before spending down their savings and said that he created his 4% rule based on an imaginary investor who retired in 1968. Why was the original 4% rule considered too conservative? This investor ran into a terrible perfect storm of bad stock market returns and very bad inflation. How did historical events influence retirement planning? But I found an article published in late 2022 that says he has now expanded his withdrawal rates rule to be a little bit less conservative. Why was the withdrawal rate rule changed? In an interview with Money with Katie, which is a morning brew show here on YouTube, William Bengen actually stated that his original thesis included a very simple portfolio. The original research just had two asset classes, intermediate-term U.S. Treasury bonds and U.S. large-cap stocks. How did expanding the portfolio affect the withdrawal rate? Not exactly a diversified portfolio. You know, he had to start from somewhere. Why is diversification important in investment portfolios? So, we can see that his original research included a simple portfolio of just two asset classes. And while some people would probably use this type of portfolio, most investors these days have a larger mix of asset classes than just, let's say, intermediate bonds and large-cap stocks. Why do most investors prefer a more diversified portfolio today? And as he's added more asset classes to his own portfolio, he was able to backtest against his new portfolio composition and basically revise his suggestion to ultimately increase his suggested withdrawal rate. How did adding more asset classes improve the withdrawal rate? According to the same article, William Bengen has increased the withdrawal rate he uses on his own retirement portfolio to 4.7%, largely because of the upside he's gained by adding small and micro-cap asset classes to his portfolio. What is the advantage of including small and micro-cap assets in your portfolio? He has also said that, right now, I use 7 asset classes, including 5 in stocks, cash, and treasury bonds, and I think it tracks closer to what a sophisticated investor would use. Why do sophisticated investors use multiple asset classes? Quick message from today's sponsor. One of the issues that I regularly face is accurately keeping track of my subscriptions. Even though I track 99% of my expenses, I genuinely still forget some of the subscriptions that I sign up for through mobile apps. How can subscription tracking tools help you save money? That's where the sponsor of today's video, Rocket Money, can really help. How can Rocket Money assist you in managing your subscriptions? By signing up for Rocket Money, you can cancel any memberships right through their app. Why is it important to regularly review and cancel unused subscriptions? They ask for a bit of personal information just so they can cancel it on your behalf, and they usually take just a few days. How easy is it to use Rocket Money to manage your finances? They can cancel any unwanted subscriptions with just a tap. How effective is Rocket Money in helping you eliminate unnecessary expenses? Now, I'm pretty good with my finances, but I personally use it these days just to keep tabs on all of my subscriptions to make sure that I never run into a situation where I'm paying for something that I'm not using. Why should you monitor your subscriptions regularly? You can also use Rocket Money to automatically monitor your spending by category and get notifications when you've exceeded your limits. How can automatic spending monitoring tools enhance your financial discipline? Since I eat out a lot, for example, I could set this up for restaurants and get notified and alerted whenever I'm going too hard on sushi. What are the benefits of detailed expense categorization? Rocket Money has helped its customers save up to $740 per year with over $500 million in canceled subscriptions. How much can you save by canceling unnecessary subscriptions? So, just go to rocketmoney.com, Humphrey, or click the link in the description to get started for free. Why is it worth trying out Rocket Money? You can also unlock even more features with premium, and that's rocketmoney.com/Humphrey to get started for free. How can a reliable financial tool support your saving goals? And thank you to them for sponsoring this portion of the video. How does a higher withdrawal rate change your retirement savings amount? So if we go with his recommendation, how does a 4.7% withdrawal rate actually change what your retirement savings amount looks like? What does a higher withdrawal rate mean for your savings? Well, it turns out quite a lot, because if you want to spend $40,000 per year in retirement and you plan on withdrawing 4% of your nest egg every year, you actually need a total nest egg of $1 million. How much do you need to save to cover your desired retirement expenses? Now, if you were to change that withdrawal rate to 4.7%, you would only need $851,000 to retire comfortably. What difference does adjusting the withdrawal rate make? That's a difference of over $149,000 just from changing how much you're withdrawing every single year. What risks come with a higher withdrawal rate? Of course, the biggest risk to consider here when you're withdrawing that much more money every year is that you are increasing the risk that you outlive your money. How can you mitigate the risk of outliving your retirement savings? However, William Bengen, the founder of the 4% rule, suggests that based on his historical backdata and if you have a well-diversified portfolio, the 4.7% rule is well within reason and actually quite conservative. Is the 4.7% rule a safe strategy? And you can actually go with this. Should you adopt a higher withdrawal rate? Of course, I would probably argue that if you are on the risk-averse side, you can still stick with the 4% rule or even lower, especially if you're retiring earlier. How should your risk tolerance influence your withdrawal rate? But I did want to show you the relationship between a higher withdrawal rate and how it affects the total retirement savings that you actually need. How does a higher withdrawal rate affect your overall retirement savings? Now, taking this a step further, if you actually targeted a $1.8 million retirement fund like the articles and studies state, then withdrawing 4.7% of it every single year would allow you to withdraw $84,500 annually. How much would you be withdrawing annually with a 4.7% rate? At a 4% withdrawal rate, that annual withdrawal rate is actually the equivalent of $72,000. Why is a lower withdrawal rate more sustainable? I'm going to argue that most retirees in America probably won't spend between $72,000 to $84,000 per year in retirement. How much do most Americans actually spend in retirement? That's considering the fact that the median personal income in the United States for an individual is around $50,000 per year, and that the average person will probably spend less than their salary in retirement anyway. Why might retirees spend less than their pre-retirement income? There are some other considerations to consider as well, like the fact that if we include pensions or Social Security payments, or perhaps any side hustles or side income in our equation here, how do additional income sources affect your retirement needs? According to the Social Security Administration, The average retirement benefit in January 2024 was $1,907 per month. How much do Social Security benefits contribute to retirement income? Let's actually round that down to $1,800 per month in Social Security, just to be somewhat conservative here, and that's still $21,600 per year. How do government benefits reduce your required savings? That's provided to you by the government and will therefore reduce the total amount that you actually need as your nest egg. How can government benefits offset private savings needs? So, back to our original example. If you want to spend $40,000 per year in retirement, but you're actually getting Social Security or a pension to the tune of $21,600 per year, that means you need to spend roughly $199,400 of your nest egg in the first year. How do you calculate the remaining amount needed after accounting for benefits? So at a 4.7% withdrawal rate, you would need your retirement savings to be around $412,000. Why is this amount more realistic for the average American? Of course, a lot of you guys in the comments will probably come at me and state, well, we don't really know if Social Security is still going to be around by the time we retire, and oh, Social Security benefits decrease the older you get. How can uncertainties in Social Security affect your planning? Yes, I am aware. Both of those are true, but I am merely showing you that if you have some extra income, how it can affect the total amount that you actually need to retire. How can additional income sources influence your retirement planning? My main goal here is to actually debunk the article and the Schwab study that says you need $1.8 million to retire comfortably, because for a lot of you guys, you can do it for a lot less. Why is the $1.8 million figure not necessarily accurate for everyone? Now, another big goal for a lot of you guys out there is going to be early retirement. What are the benefits and challenges of early retirement? Now, in that case, the earlier you want to retire, the more money you will need since you need to live off of that amount for even longer. Why does early retirement require more savings? So, what I like to do for fun, and also what you can do, is to use a website like Networthy's calculator to figure that out. How can online tools assist in retirement planning? If we simply play around with it, you can see that someone with the current annual income of $75,000 and a 70% savings rate can retire in 7.1 years, starting with a zero portfolio balance. How does a high savings rate accelerate retirement? As soon as you turn that savings rate down to 50%, we're looking at 12.1 years, and then at a 20% savings rate, it'll take you much longer, 26.7 years. As your savings rate increases by 5% incrementally, the number of working years you need until retirement will actually go down. How do different savings rates impact your retirement timeline? Now, you can see with this table here, this actually assumes the 4% withdrawal rate rule, but you can see that at a savings rate of 10%, it will take you around 51 years until retirement. Why is increasing your savings rate so impactful? It really starts to get good and shorter at a 65% savings rate, where you can retire within a decade. How significant is a 65% savings rate for early retirement? But if we take a look at the average American savings rate in the US, it's actually 4.5%. Why is a higher savings rate crucial for early retirement in America? So that actually shows us that retiring in America is extremely difficult unless we increase our savings rates. How can increasing your savings rate make early retirement achievable? That's why on the channel, I always recommend that if you can, strive for a savings rate of at least 15% or maybe even 20% or higher. What savings rates should you aim for to improve your retirement prospects? Then your chances of early retirement are going to be possible. How can you make early retirement attainable through disciplined saving? All right, here's another example. Let's pretend you have an annual salary of $100,000 and you save 40% of it per year, and your portfolio value as of right now is $50,000. How can you optimize your savings strategy to reach your retirement goals? Technically, you could retire in 15.2 years with a 4.7% withdrawal rate. What does a 4.7% withdrawal rate mean for your retirement timeline? That means if you're 30 years old right now and able to save a ton of money and invest it, you could theoretically retire by the age of 45. How can disciplined saving and investing enable early retirement? I'll leave a link to this calculator down below, but I think it's fun to play around with and really understand your numbers. Why is it important to understand and adjust your retirement calculations? Again, remember, if you are saving a ton of money, let's say 25%, 30%, or maybe even 40%, the most important part of that whole equation is that you stay disciplined and maintain that savings rate as long as possible in order to retire early. Why is discipline in maintaining your savings rate critical for early retirement success? All right, so now that we know that we might not need a really big nest egg to retire at the more traditional age of 67, we still want to come up with an action plan to get us to retirement. How can you develop an effective action plan for retirement? So, I have 4 huge tips for you guys as part of a mini guide on how to figure that out. The first thing you must do is to define your retirement preferences and be flexible with how much they may change. Why is it important to clearly define your retirement preferences? So I would ask myself a question like, do you want to spend $20,000 per year, or $40,000 per year, or $60,000 per year? Or do you want a lifestyle where you can spend anything and not just have to worry? How can you realistically assess your desired retirement spending? Once you figure that out, you want to reevaluate where you are every single year along the way, especially if you're trying to retire early. Why is regular reassessment of your retirement plan important? Things are always going to change, and we must be dynamic when it comes to what our retirement looks like, especially as our income might fluctuate or our expenses might fluctuate. How can you stay flexible in your retirement planning? Number 2, the second thing you must do is to avoid life decisions that actually derail your compounding, such as lifestyle creep. What is lifestyle creep, and how can you avoid it? Avoid things like getting a crazy fancy new car or getting involved in some sort of get-rich-quick scheme that will kill your ability to retire early. How can smart spending decisions support your retirement planning? Number 3, plan as much as you can, both with investments as well as relationship and family decisions. Why is planning so crucial for successful retirement? For example, if you're retiring early, you should also consider that your retirement accounts can't be withdrawn until the age of 59 and a half without penalty. What must you consider if you plan to retire early? So, if you're retiring at the age of 40 or 45, you actually need to consider where your money is going to come from before your retirement funds actually unlock. How can you ensure you have funds available before your retirement accounts are accessible? Another thing to consider is that your partner will play a huge role in whether you can actually retire early, whether it's through their income or perhaps their spending habits are a little bit out of whack. How does your partner influence your ability to retire early? And also, if you have children, that's another thing to consider that will probably slow down your retirement speed because of how expensive children are. How do family commitments impact your retirement timeline? But hopefully, it's a fulfilling thing to have. How can you balance family life with financial goals? Lastly, I want you guys to try to keep your investment fees as low as possible. Why are low investment fees important for your retirement planning? Don't try to time the market, and don't take on any hard money or bad debt like credit card debt. How can avoiding bad debt enhance your retirement savings?